So first, of course, I'll always check up our motivation. Why are we attending? Just for our entertainment, or I've got a lot of stress. I'd like to resolve my stress, or as I say, am I doing this for more than myself? Doing this for the benefit of others? So of these, of course, wishing to become more enlightened is very good. But if we'd like to have a more, let's say, good effect on ourselves, including others, but including others in the sense of that we have a feeling of love. Okay, so say, okay, I'm attending the class and I'm doing it for my pet dog. Okay, so I'd like to offer a more enlightened relationship to my pet dog. That's beneficial because what you've done is you generated a love in your heart. And certainly we can love our pets sometimes a lot easier than we love other humans. Okay, but anyway, main point is we're attending the class for the benefit of more than just ourselves. And then I'll do just a simple prayer of refuge, and then I'll do a Mandala offering. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha from now until enlightenment. I'll work for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all beings be happy. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha from now until enlightenment. I'll work for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all beings be happy. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha from now until enlightenment. I'll work for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all beings be happy. Sashi Boki Choshin Mito Dam Rira Linji Nida Gumbadi Sangajim Dumingde Boargi Robana Najin Yedam Guru Rana Mandalaka Mir Taya. It's funny, I can mandala, I guess, this crown sprinkled with water, saffron water and incense, adorned with Mount Meru, sun and moon. I don't remember that. I don't memorize the English for it. But anyway, okay. So we are in the Ganges Mahamudra, and I just want to review what we've done. So the last two classes, I did not talk about the Ganges Mahamudra, but what I tried to do is set up a foundation for you to have, let's say, potentially what I consider as kind of a good experience, and a little bit more from a Western point of view. I don't think anything that I presented was sort of against, or let's say opposite to what any of the more traditional Tibetan or Buddhist presentations would have been. But I just tried to make it that it would be, as a Westerner, how would we approach it, that it would be fit with us very well. Like how could we sort of utilize our cultural experience to be able to utilize or benefit best from these teachings. So, and then I shifted the object of investigation. Of course, you can remember we're Mahayana Buddhists, we're Bodhisattvas. So we first analyze the nature of phenomena, and later we can analyze the nature of our sense of self. And that's because Bodhisattvas want to have more pliability, more flexibility in dealing and helping sentient beings. And so therefore, appreciating that no phenomena is independently self-existent is very complementary to looking at a sentient being and seeing that there's something to be worked with. So as the traditional one is analysis of a car, or actually there's a couple ones. There's one of Fire and Firewood by Nagarjuna. It's really, it's quite intriguing to listen or to look at. It's a very short text. It's only like in 1 page or 1.5 pages, but it really it's an intellectual exercise, and it's very good because it is our intellect, how we understand things, that creates our problems or gives us our solutions. And although an ultimate experience of the nature of reality is said to be non-conceptual, we do approach it through conceptuality. So I thought that in my time of practicing that I wanted something that was much closer to me, and so I picked my own body and immersed in the atmosphere. And I find that being really useful because just with every breath I take, I can immediately identify that I am interdependent, immersed, and penetrated in an ocean of atmosphere. And what's interesting with that, and again, this is sort of little side commentaries, is that your mind moves to an object and it holds that object. So if we move our mind to ourselves, like, oh, you said something rude to me, oh, I'm getting defensive, or I'm going to be aggressive, object of mind is, well, some word that was said, but then it's me. Whereas if your mind moves, for example, to the, well, in this case, it's atmosphere, but it's sort of like it's the bigger world around us, but we just use atmosphere because we're immersed in it. We're like a fish in a fish tank. We're immersed in this object. So by touching that and appreciating it as a dynamic of interdependence, then the reflection to your sense of self is quite easy to say, okay, well, I'm interdependent, I'm not self-existent. So it's a stepping stone towards it. And certainly, in our studies, we may have understood that, voidness is, it's like this vast open, like the space of the sky. Well, that is ultimate perspective. And as we follow Nagarjuna, he says that the correct understanding, or I think that the way it goes is that if you understand it, or the king or queen of understandings, if you understand interdependence, you understand the void. And if you understand the void, you understand interdependence. They are complementary. So that's a really, really important step to have, So in regards to then a way to get ourselves sort of into a correct understanding is I like the idea of I'm immersed and penetrated in the ocean of atmosphere. That means that I have no independent self-existence. Not one iota, not one atom of me has that independent self-existence. But my mind touched atmosphere, and the reflection was then I'm empty of self-existence. So it sort of moves us away from a little bit overemphasizing our sense of self. We can move to that. So that's just, as you say, it's what I've come to. It's how I like to work with it. I don't know. It'd be sort of interesting to have a debate with some people that were more philosophically or scholastically inclined, because I'm certainly I'm not trying to say that this is the most profound technique. I mean, I've studied traditionally for years. The traditional presentations, so I'm quite familiar with them. But I wanted something that was practical for my sense of self, my sense of self, but in a realistic way. Okay, so funny how the words work, isn't it? But that's actually I must admit the Tibetans are really good with dialectics. In this is that the way you say something has implications, and that's the whole thing. If you do study, Lorik and Tarik and things like that, which are the sort of Tibetan words for the dialectics, it's really intriguing because how do you phrase a sentence? I mean, if you're married and you've gone to some counseling, you might be taught how to sort of like how you phrase things to your partner, and it's really intriguing when you sort of realize how you were not communicating really very well. Anyway, so I'm off topic, but the point is that there is something in how we phrase something, and then the effect it has on consciousness. And so, although identifying that I'm immersed and penetrated in an ocean of consciousness isn't a direct perception, the inference of it is beneficial for us as a stepping stone towards understanding reality. And again, I'm getting a little bit philosophical, but I'd like to put it in context. So then you can do that just as a meditation. You sit there and you breathe, and then with that, then you just phrase everything has to communicate with everything else, or that part of your body dies. And that's what a heart attack is. Your heart doesn't get the oxygen it needs for the muscle to stay alive. So that's very common knowledge for us in our culture. So it's very easy to use that. So that was just the first thing, is that we utilize immersed and penetrated in an ocean of atmosphere as the referral point for I am completely interdependent, empty of any independent self-existence. Okay, and then also the foundation was, it's important to say, okay, there's as a Buddhist, when you're analyzing reality, it's the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, thoughts, perceptions, and consciousness. Okay, and with that, then form does include all forms in the universe and your body, and then there's the form of the mind. Okay, so that you organize yourself to move into understanding Mahamudra. And I think that's important. It's not just sort of, you jump in. So on the basis of those, we are today moving into the Ganges Mahamudra. Now, I explained in the first class that I received this from Thangpa Rinpoche in Canada and Vancouver. I specifically sought him out to receive the transmission. I received it privately because I couldn't attend any teachings that he was giving on it. But, and so I do have the lineage for this. So in reading it, it is a transmission to some extent, although again, we don't need to be overly official. So Ganji's Mahamudra, homage to Vajradakini. Although Mahamudra cannot be taught, intelligent and patient Naropa, tolerant of suffering, who is engaged in austerity and is devoted to the Guru, fortunate one, do this with your mind. Okay, so we're all familiar with Tilopa and Naropa were a teacher-student relationship. Of course, Naropa is one of the main lineage transmissions for most of, or for a great many of our teachings, especially the Tantras, coming through Marpa and then down through a series of teachings through to Tsongkhapa and then to ourselves through the lineage of teachers. So anyway, this identifies, this is Tilopa talking to Naropa. And again, it says, although Mahamudra cannot be taught, intelligent, patient, Naropa, tolerant of suffering, do this with your mind. Now, there are 6 examples given here, and they're all really fantastic. Now, first off, when it says space, space actually isn't a something, okay? So, for example, I mean, if I have my coffee cup, let's say this is planet Earth, okay, and it's circling around the sun. Okay, it's not like space gets out of the way of the planet Earth as it goes around the sun. Space is non-obstruction, okay? So space is everywhere, and then actually space is not a something. It's merely a label on something that we can appreciate, you know, on a phenomena that we can appreciate, but it's not a something. And those are some interesting sort of steps to do with your own mind, to go and say, okay, well, when I talk about that, I'm not talking about there's some space and then, like I say, planet Earth has to get out of the way, or it gets out of the way of planet Earth. No, it's just non-obstruction. And when you understand that, then you're sort of getting close to the understanding of voidness. And so, for example, in the Heart Sutra, it says, form here is only emptiness, emptiness is only form, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness is no other form, feeling, thought, choice, consciousness itself are the same as this, all dharma here are empty, all the dharma void, etc. Okay, so, and that's the Japanese version of the Heart Sutra, just in case you're curious. Then again, the void isn't a something, but it's a correct understanding. Okay, so again, these are little steps which are really important. So, okay. For example, in space, what is resting on what? Okay. Now, in this case, you know, it is talking, well, if you looked at, okay, I guess, you know, space, you know, we're very conscious of the fact of the sun and the moon and the planets and everything like that. So, okay, so in space, just openness, okay, non-obstruction. What's resting on what? In one's mind, Mahamudra, there is nothing to be shown. Rest, relaxed in a natural state without attempting to alter anything. If this fetter or bondage of thought is loosened, there is no doubt that you will be liberated. Okay, now part of that, again, in the exercises that I suggested was that to be in a jet at 30,000 feet and the jet in your body keeps going on a clear sunny day, no clouds, and your mind rests in that clear open space of the sky. Now, that actually is an exercise that's done in some of the traditions, particularly I think in the Kagyu and the Nyingmapa, they have exercises like that. So one is that you go to a tall building and you go on the tallest part of that building, lie on your back, and you look up into the space of the sky, and you can't see any referral point like any of the building or anything. And then you try to sort of allow yourself to appreciate open spaciousness, like no physical objects. Another example is you go to a mountain where there's a cliff, and then you go to where the cliff is sort of the most sort of let's say out, and then you sit there and where you can't see anything to sort of give you a sense of form. So those are exercises that are within the Tibetan system. Again, I won't quote the sources or stuff, but those are the ones I've heard of. So in this case, because we do have in our culture and time jets, and it's not difficult to allow ourselves to be in a jet at 30,000 feet, get a window seat, look out the window, and you can see lots of space around you, and then let your imagination do the rest, which is just, okay, the plane in your body keep going, and your mind stays in that open space of the sky. Okay, that's a one step to get you to a little bit of a sense of openness and spaciousness. Okay, there is again the sort of second component that the understanding of reality is a non-dualistic experience. That is particular for the Buddhist point of school. So again, I've been living in India in Mexico now for quite a long time, and of course there's Christianity and God. And I never really thought of God or anything at all. I didn't really have much connection with Christianity, other than I can appreciate Jesus Christ, but I really didn't. But then I thought, okay, for a Christian, God is the ultimate. Okay, so okay, like that's the ultimate. There's nothing extra after God. God is the ultimate. Okay, that helped me go, wow. In Buddhism, we have an ultimate. The ultimate is the most subtle nature of the mind. It's the Mahamudra, that there's, the ultimate truth, the ultimate perspective. Okay, there's nothing after that. Okay, so in non-duality, you are not, I am observing space of the sky. I am space of sky. And again, with your imagination, being in a jet at 30,000 feet, but then the jet in the body keeps going, you are open space of sky. And then rather than I am looking at space of sky, then you try to make it more like it's like I am open space of sky. Okay, those are exercises which then will complement all of this, what we're doing now with Ganesh's Mahamudra. So if you are focused on space, what is space resting on? Well, it's not resting on anything. Okay, so then you try to leave your mind sort of like just really open. It's almost scary, isn't it? But actually there's a commentary on that. If when you're approaching an appreciation of the ultimate nature of reality, and you feel fear, it's a sign of a lack of merit. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you don't have a rich bank account of positive energy. If, and this again depends on individuals, you understand the open nature of reality, that all phenomena are open, empty, and open substances. This is like open space of sky. If you understand that and you feel bliss, it's because you have a wealth of merit. Okay, that everything's interconnected. I'm not independently self-existent. I'm free. I'm free of all of the encumbrances which I normally use to baggage my mind with. Okay, so just in curiosity, so some people might get a little bit like uncomfortable, like okay, I am open space of sky, but I got a parachute on, something like that. Now, the antidote to that would be to come back and you're breathing, and I'm immersed and penetrated in the ocean of interdependence of the atmosphere and stuff, and so then you lose that sense of sort of like your mind sort of isolating itself and feeling independent, or in some way like like that. And again, I mean, what is this that our planet Earth is spinning at some 1,000 miles an hour, going through open space to the sky, and we aren't really resting at any one point. There's a continual movement, and what makes it sort of stable is the atmosphere doesn't spin as fast as the planet Earth. So we have a sensation of there's stability. And this is just science, and how if you get a good presentation, it's nothing to do with Buddhism, but it helps you maybe think a little bit about in space what is resting on what. Okay, so that's just the first example, a little bit of side commentary, but again, if you were to try to do it as an exercise, I think being in a jet at 30,000 feet, jet keeps going, and then you are space to sky, and then you say, okay, well, what's resting on nothing? And then there's that sense of like openness, and then, but this is again is intriguing, where the actual words are important. Remember at the beginning I said dialectics. So when you say openness, you're sort of saying that there's a something, okay? But what you want is empty. And empty, well, void, no, but empty is a little bit better word, I think, in English sometimes, because just empty of self-existence. So you're not actually having a something, let's say you're refuting that there's a something, but you're focused on it, you're empty. That's what the mind reflects on. Again, if you think my mind takes objects, okay, it assumes positions. in this case, empty of self-existence. Now that's profound. Okay, but we're trying to get towards that. So that's where then you can do these different exercises to help you arrive at that. But the point is it's still, when you have, okay, what is space? There's space resting on space. So you've got that big sense of open space of the sky. You're resting at that. And then try to be non-dualistic. I am open space of the sky. And then what would be that? Well, that's all open. Again, but it's sort of, you're positing something. So then you say empty. And then you try to rest in that. It's a bit scary, but it's anyway, it is thing. There's a commentary, and I'm still looking for some friends to discuss this with. And, I've been around a long time, so there's Gavin Carity and Glenn Mullen and Alex Burrs, and I haven't seen him for years, but Alex Burrs, and then a couple other ones. And I've heard that Tsongkhapa, in the earlier phases of his presentation of the nature of reality, said that you intellectually approach the ultimate nature of reality, but when you enter into it, which is the path of seeing exists for a millisecond, and then you're in the path of learning. Okay, if you're talking about the 5 paths again, that he said that you would go into the experience of voidness unconsciously, so to speak, because it's a non-conceptual experience. And so you rest in that. But when you came out, because of the implications of having had that experience, you then understand reality. So Tsongkhapa did that supposedly for a long time. And then again, I haven't found anybody to talk with us about, but supposedly when he's about 50 years old, he received some teachings. And then there was the sense that you could be conscious of the ultimate nature of reality, that ultimate perspective. I guess called Rigpa and the Nyingmapa tradition and such like that. But I say I'm still working on trying to find someone to discuss that with. But bottom line is let's just go with the exercise that, okay, what's resting on what? Go to this exercise number 2. For example, it is like looking in the middle of the sky and not seeing anything. In the same way, when your mind looks at mind, thoughts stop, and you attain unsurpassable awakening. Now, there's a really simple example of this. You're looking at your computer screen, bring your attention back 10 inches, okay? That's space. You're actually seeing clear light. There's no, it depends on the light bulb in the room, of course, but the thing is, that is middle of space. That's the middle of sky. It's an intriguing sort of little exercise to do. So you look at something, pull your attention back 10, 20 inches from that object, and then your mind is actually, you now identify space, or like in this case, it says sky, the thing. And then so again, so then that is when your mind looks at your mind, thoughts stop and you attain unsurpassed awakening. Now, that is an experience of consciousness. When mind looks at mind, in this case, it's not looking at the particular phenomena of mind. It's looking at consciousness itself, which is identified with being clear light without form, etc., etc. Okay, this sort of energy, I guess. Next one. For example, just as vapor that is arising from the earth becomes clouds and dissolves into the expanse of space, not going anywhere else, and yet not continuing to abide anywhere. In the same way, the agitation of the thoughts that arise from the mind and within the mind is calmed the instant you see the mind's nature. So mind's nature is consciousness, okay? That is, you're not focused on. No, all of these are aimed at ultimate perspective. You gotta remember that. Okay, relative perspective, you have phenomena, all interdependent, all interacting with each other based on causes and circumstances and impermanently always changing and stuff like that. This phenomena merely labeled, Madhyamika point of view. When you move to the ultimate perspective, there is no phenomena can appear more than any other phenomena. So you're looking at the nature, not the individual aspects, but the nature of the phenomena. And when you observe that, you're looking then, well, because the mind is trying to appreciate, understand that is looking at the nature of the mind, open like the space of the sky, clear light. Okay, these are the examples. So in this case, it says, just as clouds form and then they dissolve and dissipate, they don't go anywhere or anything like that. there's an interesting example of this. Again, it comes, I think, from Nagarjuna, is that, for example, right now in the Northern Hemisphere, we are leaving summer and winter is arriving, okay? So it's not that like, it's really interesting. Like if you were to think of like, okay, we were in the summer and then from the southern part of the hemisphere, winter is going to come up here and we're going to get cold. Or I guess if you say that, you know, I mean, it's like winter doesn't come from somewhere. It merely is a dynamic that manifests because of the changes of the position of the earth to the sun and a variety of other things. So summer doesn't come, winter doesn't come from somewhere. It merely is a change of the dynamic of what's happening. So like that, then, although clouds appear, they don't come from somewhere. Clouds don't go somewhere. They just manifest due to causes and circumstances and abide, and then they dissipate or evaporate or whatever you want to say. So the same thing, your thoughts don't come from somewhere and go somewhere. They merely manifest due to causes and circumstances. And these are exercises to make you think about nature of reality. And again, we're talking ultimate perspective. For example, the next one, just as the nature of space transcends color and shape, and just as space is therefore unaffected or unchanged and unobscured by the various colors and shapes that occur within it, in the same way, the essence of your mind transcends color and shape. Therefore, it is never obscured or affected by the various colors and shapes of virtue and non-virtue or wrongdoing. Now, the example of this is if you put a clear piece of glass on top of a tablecloth that was colored blue, the glass looks like colored blue. And if you put the glass on red, it becomes colored red. But glass never is blue or red. It is translucent or transparent always. So the mind doesn't have a nature. So in this case, it was particularly, I mean, really, this is really important, especially if you have a lot of, negativity or you're very, obsessed about yourself. You feel like I'm like this and I'm like that. Okay, so the mind is the nature of consciousness. The mind is never obscured or affected by the various colors or shapes of virtue and non-virtue. So that's really profound. So you could take, for example, let's say you're experiencing a depression, not a severe depression because that's a bit too strong. Let's say a mild depression that you don't need to say, oh, this is truly existent. It's merely a dynamic. The nature of my consciousness is free of that, is liberated of that. It is not obscured by that. Or, again, you could say when you're happy, you can say my mind is not affected by it, but then we like happiness, don't we? So we get attached to it. But the point is that, so it's just the nature of my being, it has various colors and shapes and such, but it's not the nature of those. The nature of consciousness is not that. Nature is clear light, momentary moments of consciousness or whatever. Okay, it's an energy, always changing and dynamic and such like that. These are some of the examples. I mean, clear light is the best example in the sense that it is, well, it's not a something, but okay, it is clear light, the nature of consciousness. Now that's the most subtle aspect. And then as consciousness gets coarser, then it takes on various aspects and shapes and things like that. And then how do you help to understand that? Well, then you have the analogies. For example, we talked about the 3 verses in Lama Chopa that, everything is open like the space of the sky. And then everything is like, a dynamic of imagery. And we used again, a more modern version of that as a 3D movie. Put the glasses on and you see the dinosaur stick his head out of the screen and put its head back, or a shark or something like that. Lift the glasses up and it's not there. It's like that. So our normal vision exaggerates the colors and shapes that are within our consciousness to being truly existent. When we have a correct understanding, it's like we lift the glasses up and we appreciate that they're not truly existent. They're just a dynamic of causes and circumstances, just like a shark appearing on a the IMAX theater screen, okay, like that. This is something interesting. Okay, so then again, you're starting to, you could say, deconstruct your exaggeration of phenomena by these examples. Okay. Then another example. For example, it is like a luminous heart of the sun, which could never be obscured even by the darkness of 1,000 eons. In the same way, the luminous clarity that is the essence of the mind is never obscured by samsara and numerous eons. So this applies a little bit to your Dharmakaya, or I'm sorry, your Buddha nature, that it has always been there, but we've always been so extroverted that we've never appreciated that we have, say, our soul, our Buddha nature, our most profound nature of consciousness is this clear light. Clarity, luminous clarity is in the text. Okay, that's the nature. But then as that consciousness got coarser, we then exaggerated phenomena. There's sort of an interesting way of thinking about this, in the sense that if you were to, let's see, anyway, so the nature of consciousness is clear. So the most subtle mind, okay, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. So normally we're all caught up with this 5 sense doors: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. So consciousness is continually stimulated by forms and colors and such. It's stimulated by sound, smell, taste, and physical sensations. Okay. When we pull our mind back, and again, this is in Buddhist terminology, we have 6 senses. The 6th one is mental sense, instead of sort of positioned in your heart center, okay, your thing, but it's you could say your sense of self, but it's mind sense being base. That if you shut down the 5 sense doors, or let's say, for example, you're doing mindfulness meditation. So in mindfulness meditation, you focus on the breathing, okay, so whether it's inhalation or exhalation and such, and then, I mean, if you follow mindfulness, for example, if you do satipatthana or something like that, then often it's done with like you have breathing. That's a fairly coarse object of consciousness. Then you refine that and you get sensation, for example, in the nose, or for example, the movement of the chest, and then you get sensation within the lungs. Your attention shifts over, rather than inhalation, exhalation, to just the sensation of the breathing. So you move to what's actually consciousness, conscious sensation. Okay, your mind focuses on that. So you're disengaging from the 5 sense doors, and you're actually focusing in consciousness, mind on conscious energy. That's the energy, the sensation. And then if you focus on just the sensation, mind can get more and more subtle. And so basically, you lose the external trappings or engagements that you have. Your consciousness goes to being more subtle. And within that, then you can arrive at just the experience of consciousness, which is just a clarity. Because if you make that clarity as a little bit coarser, then it's going to say, well, this morning, I have a messy hair day. Your mind reflects and sort of says that, or like, I didn't shave this morning, or I didn't have a bath, so I'm smelling a little bit, or gee, I didn't get breakfast this morning, so I'm actually hungry. The mind reflects off of those objects and then creates your sense of self. Okay. But if you were just to focus in consciousness itself, it is clear, luminous, and that is its nature. But then, because of an identification with a particular experience or idea or philosophy or whatever you might have, you cultivate your sense of self around that. But if you were to just do meditation where you shift off of just a conscious to mind itself, and then get more subtle about it, you will lose the trappings, the engagements of what your mind is caught into, and you arrive at luminous clarity. So the actual nature of your mind, it just is just emphasis in this example, is just as the heart of the sun is luminous, it can never be obscured. So the nature of your mind is luminous, it can never be obscured. And although you might over-identify with a particular identification about yourself, or a particular emotion, feeling, or something, you should understand those are just temporary things, which are not ever like, they're just a dynamic of cause and circumstances. For example, just as we apply the term empty to space, in fact, there is nothing within space that we are actually describing by the term. That's where he said that space is just a non-obstruction. In the same way, although, we can call mind clear light or luminosity. Simply calling it so does not make it true that there's actually anything within the mind that is the true basis of that designation. So you have to, you create an example to get some clarity at that, and then you come back to your sense of self or your experience. So this is where it's good to say, okay, space is not a something, it is not obstruction. So as the planet Earth moves through the space of the solar system, it's not like space is getting out of the way. Space wasn't a something, it was merely a designation, but it's not a something. Then you say the mind, clear light, luminosity, is not a something. It's merely that we're designating it that, labeling it that, but the actual phenomenon itself is clear light. Now, we are talking about ultimate nature. There's no form or shapes within that. We're talking about, in this case, clear light, which is the label that we give to it. But again, it's not a something. It's just that we've labeled it that way, like you would label space, although it's not a something. And it is food for thought. Like you have to sit there and digest it a little bit. And then you have to say, okay, my experience of me sitting here, my consciousness, okay, the ultimate consciousness of me is that, okay? And that's where, so coming back to the way that I was trying to sort of building it up for you is your mind touches atmosphere. And then you say, I'm immersed and penetrated in atmosphere. And that means I am open, empty of any self-existence. Okay, so you use that as an analogy to say, you've touched your consciousness, your objective is, okay, atmosphere, but then the implication is I'm immersed and penetrated to the atomic level, to the subatomic level, whatever. I mean, to that, it's just so I am an open system, empty of any self-existence. Okay, so you do that, and then you turn around and you say, okay, so my sense of self that's sitting here, okay, it has, well, let's say, as it says in the thing, that space is we apply the term empty to space, but in fact, nothing within space, which is described by that term. In the same way, we talk mind, clear light, luminosity. It is not that it's a something. It is actually just a designation. Anyway, okay, so we don't have a lot of classes, so we're just touching on it. So, stimulating thought. In that way, the nature of mind is from the beginning been like space. There is no dharmas that are not included within that. That's a little bit the Chittamantran school, where it says, that within the external phenomena are not true, but your mind is true. Okay, so they refer to it that way. And then there's 8 consciousnesses. Again, you can study a little bit if you wanted, but I just think that the easier way to reflect on it is just say, my most subtle mind is clear light. As that becomes a little coarser, then it engages the various karmic formations that I've accumulated over time, and then there's my sense of self, whether it's the masculine or feminine, and such. And what's intriguing is that if you really think about it, like think of yourself right now sitting and listening to this. From this morning when you got up, you put on a particular shirt, and you said, "Oh, I think I look good in this shirt." You feel a little bit better. My sense of self just got perked. The mind had to reflect off of the shirt, and a nice shirt in this case, and that. Or maybe you tried to comb your hair or brush your hair if you're a woman or something, or a man with longer hair or something, and it didn't go very well. And so, although you might not be overly thinking about it, sort of in the back of your mind's reflecting off of that, and you're saying, "I'm not as attractive as I'd like to be." Or again, I got up this morning and, something went wrong with a family member or a partner that I live with or something like that. So I'm carrying a little bit of that. The mind reflects off of that, and then it creates your sense of self. It's very intriguing to start to really recognize how we've created our sense of self. So anyway, these are all exercises in understanding consciousness, understanding our sense of self. I mean, if we were to take that idea of my mind merely reflects off things to create my sense of self, then we should try to pick really positive things, like I'm a bodhisattva. May all sentient beings have happiness in the cause of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering in the cause of suffering. May my mind reflect off of those things and create my sense of self, that would be constructive for me. And then, in a wisdom consciousness, because those were more sort of method, in a wisdom consciousness, my mind appreciates it. Well, if you take, again, Shinamatra philosophy is so good for this. The world's just a reflection of my mind. Okay, a little bit different. It's a slight shift there because we're talking about our sense of self is created by the mind reflecting off of things. So let's shift over to the Shinamatra says, well, the world is only a reflection of your mind. And it is a dynamic of causes and circumstances. It is other powered. Remember, we talked about this in the very first class. And then a non-duality, that you understand that everything is just a reflection of my mind. There's nothing external to that. That's the non-duality. Okay, and then that's your doorway to liberation from Shinamatra point of view. Okay, in that way, the nature of mind is from the beginning like space. There's no dharmas that are not included with that, a little bit more Chittamatra point of view. But you could say that my most subtle mind has always been liberated and free. My Dharmakaya, my Buddha nature, it's always been liberated and free. But as that consciousness got a little coarser, it then over-exaggerated, overemphasized, and such phenomena. And then I created my sense of self and such. So that's where, when we become, there's actually, we often use the word ignorance. Like, I'm ignorant of the nature of reality. But the actual Tibetan word is rikpa and marikpa. So rikpa is to understand. Marikpa is I don't understand. It's just the word ma in front of rikpa. Okay. So when you take that word, those words, then it is okay. I have rikpa, I have understanding, but in this case, if I don't understand reality, it's just there's a misunderstanding there. It's not I'm ignorant, which sounds like a something. It's rather there's just appreciation or non-appreciation, understanding or non-understanding. These are a little bit important to think about that. And I think, well, the Tibetan language was based totally on the Dharma. All the words and everything, and we went through that, I think, in the second class where I talked about the syllable ah, the vowel base ah is to be found in all phenomena that can be designated. Okay, and I won't go into it now, but let's just say that's an interesting class if you want to listen to that one. Okay, abandoning all physical actions, the practitioner should rest at ease. Without any verbal utterance, your speech becomes like an echo, sound inseparable from the emptiness. Think of nothing whatsoever with the mind and look at the dharmas of the leap. Okay, now that one, it's like right now you're listening to my voice. What you're listening to is a vibration of the air molecules and a particular tones and things like that. And then that's turning into something you understand inside your head. But the thing is that actually my words aren't a something. My words are a bunch of tones and things created by my throat, my larynx and such. They're based on things that we understand. So again, some designations and such like that. And then the only reason that you got it was because it had to be interdependent with the atmosphere. And then in this case with computers and sound waves and whatever else, blah, blah, like that. So it's interesting. So your speech is like an echo. It's not anything self-existent. Okay. And again, it says sound inseparable from emptiness. Okay. Well, remember emptiness. Well, emptiness is like a lack of self-existence. There's always, we always say the word void, and void, things are void, things are empty. But it really should actually make it a bigger set of words. Empty of self-existence, void of self-existence, or void of independent existence, or empty of inherent existence. It's better always to say a little bit the longer version of it, because then you're properly identifying what is being empty of. Okay. Okay, think of nothing whatsoever. with the mind and look at the dharmas of the leap. The leap is basically the thing we saw, like understanding reality. Okay, the dharmas of the leap. That in the Tibetan language or with translators, that word was sort of a little bit difficult. Dharmas of the leap was part of basically the experience of reality. Okay, the body is without meaning, empty, like a bamboo stalk. The mind is like the midst of space. It is inconceivable. Rest, relax within that, and without letting it go or placing it. Rest, relax in the state without sending it out or placing it in. Let it go or attempting to place it. So that's where again, the analogy that I liked was that you're in a jet plane, you're looking out the window, you let the plane and your body keep going, and then you are open like the space of the sky. Okay, then in that you can take a breath, and then you appreciate, well, I'm immersed and penetrated in this ocean of atmosphere. Again, I am empty of any independent self-existence. And then you go back and then say, okay, that's relative perspective, ultimate perspective. There's nothing in this whole universe that isn't relative to something else, interdependent with something else, open like the space of the sky, empty. You rest in that. And then you say, then if the mind starts manifesting again, the dynamic of causes and circumstances, but then you say, okay, well, I'm on my analysis of phenomena. I'm immersed and penetrated in an ocean of atmosphere. It is all interdependent, empty of any self-existence. Again, you go back. So you could say you're shifting from ultimate perspective to relative perspective, so to speak. But in this case, really, they're not different. You could say it's like the subtle level is open like the space of the sky. The coarser level is the dynamic of phenomena appearing within the ocean of interdependence. Okay, so it's like that. Okay, so your mind tries to do that. Now, again, we are talking here about the mind resting in an ultimate perspective. So the mind rests in that open state. If phenomena start appearing, you could say you dissolve them into an ocean of interdependence, universal interdependence. And again, you come back to this resting. Rest, relax within, okay. The mind is like the midst of space. It's not resting on anything, because space doesn't rest on anything. It is inconceivable. Rest, relax within that without letting it go or placing it. Relax in that state without sending it out or placing it in. Let it go or attempting to place it. So again, for me, the way that I would work with that would be just to shift back and forth between, okay, I'm in an ocean of interdependent or an ocean of atmosphere. Okay, I'm immersed and penetrated. I am open and empty. Okay, and then open and empty, that is open like this. The universe is open like the space of the sky. Everything is equally interdependent, empty of any self-existence. But then again, if phenomena appear, they're appreciated as being just an open dynamic of interdependence, causes and circumstances, not self-existence as such. Okay, we have, if mind has no direction, it is Mahamudra. With this, you will attain unsurpassable awakening. Okay, now again, these are meditative experiences, so they're not something that, walking around, you wouldn't, Oh, actually, Lama Yeshe has something to say. We're coming to the end of it at this point. So we finished page 1. We're on the start of page 2, and that's where we're going to go back when we get to next class. So coming back to what Lama Yeshe said, and it was interesting. I mean, he was a great yogi. I really enjoyed. He said things because he didn't have good English. He said things that were really actually insightful about our language. So, for example, I was attendant back in 1970, 71 for a little while, and then I went off and started to just be a monk and meditate and teach and get teachings and stuff. But when I was with him for in those first years before he got too popular, and then you had to make an appointment to see him. Prior to that, though, he'd be in Dharamsala. We were being up in Tushita Retreat Center. And one of his students would come up and say, "Oh, Lama, I'm having so much problem." And Lama would hug him and say, "Oh, don't worry, ego broken. And it was so accurate. Your ego was broken. You were upset. Something. Your sense of self that was rather rigid and not very flexible got broken. So it was perfect. He had a really, really good way of saying it. So next time you get upset, just think, oh, ego broken. And even you can try to laugh at yourself a little bit for that. Okay. But again, so that's just a side comment. But Lamayeshi said it this way. He said that what differentiates a lower bodhisattva from an upper level bodhisattva is the amount of time it takes to go from an outside situation to an inside understanding and to come back out. Now, what does that mean? So it means this, is that you're doing something, you're fairly flexible and you're adaptable and you're trying to be a bodhisattva, you're trying to be a benefit, may I help the universe around me? Remember, it's engaged Buddhism, we're engaged. Okay. And so when suddenly something gets a little too intense, something sort of, exaggerates itself and you find yourself getting like intense about it, then this is what Lamayeshi says, you go inside, you understand the nature of reality. I'm immersed and penetrated in an ocean of interdependence, ocean of atmosphere. I'm empty of self-existence. And then I come back out and I have that, I can bring that back out and I try to make the situation more flexible. Okay, so the way he phrases it, he says that the lower level bodhisattvas take a little longer to go inside and come back out. As you get to be a higher level bodhisattva, you can go in and out faster and faster. Okay, sort of like it's like a strobe light, sort of like, it's all dynamic. Okay, I'm okay. Okay, it's all dynamic. Okay, so you go in and out, in and out. And then finally, he says that we say in Buddhism that up to the 10th level bodhisattva, they still have that phenomena have a little bit of a coloration of being self-existent, independently existent, a little bit. But and so that's where they go in and come out, but they're doing it so fast. I mean, they're almost, it's like you could say they're almost enlightened completely, but they're not. They're still the 10th level bodhisattva. They're still a sentient being. When you become enlightened, you are non-dual. You experience relative reality and ultimate reality in the same consciousness. Now, again, that's inconceivable. It's just merely a designation of words. But the point is that they are spontaneous, non-dual. Okay, so that's an interesting way when you think about these 6 examples we went through, that when you think of those and then you think about yourself and your meditation and such like that, that you sort of organize yourself a little bit. So just to review things, remember, if we talked about wisdoms, the general step of wisdoms is this: everything's impermanent, always changing. Okay, but it's not arbitrary. It's always changing with the continuity of causes and circumstances. Those are held by all Buddhist schools of philosophy: impermanence and continuity of causes and circumstances. But a more holistic way of looking at that, because those are rather linear, is everything is interdependent. So interdependence is what? Well, causes and circumstances and things always changing. Okay, and then that interdependence, if you understand it correctly, is all things are empty of self-existence. So empty and interdependence should be understood as synonymous, but they completely are on the foundation of continuity of causes and circumstances and impermanence. So just from my point of view as a Westerner with words, is everything is impermanent, everything has a continuity of causes and circumstances, everything is interdependent. Then I just sort of say everything is open, and everything, and then the 5th one is empty of self-existence. And it's a stepping stone. Again, these are not like, I'm not philosophically saying open is reality, but the thing is, it helps us a little bit to appreciate that I'm in an open universe of interdependence. And then that just gives you a bit of a foundation. Then you can say, oh, well, actually, I'm creating a something like a, oneness of the universe or whatever. I mean, some fancy new agey word. No. It's all empty. And that's not, you're not positing anything. You're just open, you're open to not positing anything. These are stepping stones towards getting a good understanding of reality. Okay, so anyway, we're on the Ganges Mahamudra. We covered 6 examples. The 6 examples, if you were to identify them, as space on space, being like the sky, clouds evaporating, space is clear, the sun, which is always illuminated, and space, the definition of space. Okay, that is not something. So those are the 6 examples that are in the first, I guess, 7 paragraphs of the Ganges Mahamudra first page. That's what we've covered today. Again, for what we're doing, because this is on our 3rd session, we have 2 more sessions. Remember that we're not we're sort of, it's a dialogue. Granted, I'm doing all the talking, but the point is, it is a dialogue with maybe a little bit of a Western appreciation of some of the more traditional presentations and thoughts. Okay, that was the goal of this particular series. Okay, now we can have chat. There's a thing, if you want to put something in the chat, Ganges Mahamudra from Lou. Okay, if you want to scribble something there, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, we have a little bit of time to do that. And if nothing happens, then we've lost causes and circumstances, so the class will end. Okay.
Thank you for the teaching. I've been following you on the teachings on YouTube, and I found something very interesting that you said, that mind reflects off objects and creates a sense of self. I've been working with identifying this misconceived sense of self, and that helps a lot. And I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Actually, you brought up a good thing. Like, I think we're still looking for words that will be appropriate for our Buddhist understanding in the West. Okay, so we often say of an analysis of self. Okay, I never can quite get that, but a sense of self, I totally can get it. My mind can grab that and say, okay, John's sense of self is, okay, right now my wife is happy with me. Oh, I'm happy. I had a nice breakfast. I'm going to have a nice lunch today. It's sunny here right now where I live. I'm wearing a nice shirt that I like. My sense of self, it reflects off of all of those things and says, oh, I'm Jampa. I'm feeling good, So sense of self gives me so much context to appreciate. Now, in there, we could throw in a little bit of, okay, I think I'm absolutely wonderful because I'm wearing this great shirt. Someone gave it to me and I'm just the most great guy ever. My sense of self just got exaggerated. So again, it just, the terminology really assists an appreciation of how we feel about ourselves. Now, when you say sense of self, then again, that's more sort of a coarse appreciation. Then you get a bit more subtle. Okay, my sense of self, and then you say, well, okay, well, if I was to sit here in my meditation and say, well, how am I experiencing myself? I'm experiencing myself off the various factors I just identified, and so I have my sense of self. Automatically, that immediately, like, sort of, we can say, like, releases a little bit of self to being sense of self, and it's merely a designation. Okay, and then if I go a little bit deeper, I can find maybe deeper emotions and feelings. Like, for example, I'm a Canadian and I have a certain identification with that and things like that. But again, that's created causes and circumstances. I mean, if I was literally born 15 miles below the 49th parallel, because I was born just above the 49th parallel, I would have been an American. I would have been in the Vietnam War because of that, just that 15 miles. Okay, small circumstance, but it's a big, huge circumstance, And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying that just for a small adjustment of a latitude, I suddenly have a different sense of self. Okay, so again, we're just chatting. So sense of self, I think, for me, is a really, really good word to use when we do an analysis of ourselves. Okay, because it just sets up a foundation framework word, phrase that then allows for easier analysis. Okay, so just my chit chat. Any other comments?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to thank you. you putting this in more Western terms, it brings a lot of clarity, you know, in trying to read these ancient texts that sometimes get quite confusing with the terminology. Like I have this thing about saying emptiness of inherent existence when inherent existence is not inexistent. I feel more comfortable saying emptiness of the inherent existence of production, you know, to throw something in there that's more specific of what it's saying. Just talking. And may I ask you, where in Mexico are you, Jampa?
I'm in Torreon, which if you went from El Paso straight south, you hit Chihuahua. You go straight south, you hit Torreon. If you go east, you'd be in Monterrey. If you go west, you'd be in Mazatlan.
Oh, okay. So you're in northern Mexico. I'm from northern Mexico myself, Sonora.
Okay, well, good.
Okay. Thank you.
Muy bien. Okay, so other questions, chit-chats?
If I may?
Sure.
Yeah. I totally agree with Aida that your input or your insight on Western minds works well, like for me also. And I'd like to ask you, maybe address you my question. I've been practicing for like a couple years now, and for some time I struggle with this. I think it's aversion towards reciting prayers. It's like I like to meditate. I like to sit down. I like to practice every day, twice a day, whatever. But when I think that lately, like I have to do beforehand something, like not, you know, just to recite something. And again, when you read scriptures, traditional text, and so on, it could be a little bit overwhelming because many teachers and lamas said in the text, like, you should do that, you should do that, you should do that, you should do that. And so I started to reflect on this, like this is another thing that I have to do, and like which I don't like to do. So and I don't want to continue with such an attitude, and maybe you have some advice how to change this attitude, how to change the perspective on this.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I mean, for example, I'm a student of both Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. And if you want to have extensive prayers, we'll go to Lama Zopa. I mean, my God, I mean, or my Buddha. Yeah, but it's excruciating as far as I'm concerned. But so I don't disagree with you. But that's so I would say finding the middle ground in prayers that you enjoy to say that are meaningful for you, and not being too rigid about it, but just sort of finding the ones that sort of work for you. So, for example, I love Shanti Deva. I mean, some of his little is his poetry. His Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shanti Deva is poetry, if you look at it correctly. And so some of the poetry is just gorgeous. You know, it's just great. So I would say that I don't disagree with you. I find sometimes prayers are just so monotonous and things. Yeah, I mean, and so difficult. But I try to find what's meaningful for me in the words. Now, why would you say prayers? Is because it's taking feelings and thoughts and making yourself familiar with them. So looking at a thing like, for example, okay, I go for Refuge Buddha Dharma Sangha. So in my mind, Buddhas are inspiration. So Dalai Lama and the other great teachers, my inspiration. So yeah. And then how do I do that? Well, I do it with the Dharma. That's the technique. And then I have a bunch of friends. So I take Refuge Buddha Dharma Sangha. Now, I had to think about that beforehand so that I can say, I sincerely take refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. Wow. And then from now until enlightenment, that for me, that's I like to think of it in the next rebirth, who that person will not know me. They will not know my name. They will not know that I was a Canadian and lived in Mexico. They will know nothing. But they will be affected by the way that I acted and the way I accumulated my karma. I want that person to have some good qualities and some benefit from who I was in this rebirth. Now, So I look at it, the way I act in this rebirth are my presents, my Christmas presents for the person in the next rebirth. So may I send them a lot of good Christmas presents. So you cultivate yourself, not just with peacefulness, but also with some meaningful thoughts and reflections. Just the idea that may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. That's a beautiful prayer. It's just, may everybody have happiness and the cause of happiness. Now, again, you might immediately come to mind like some, people in Israel right now, or the, Gaza, and it's so horrible. Okay, what you just did is destroyed that thought. Okay, so when you say, no, just from my heart, I wish everybody to have happiness and the cause of happiness. Okay, I would that thing. And then if you want to shift, and then may everybody be free of suffering, the cause of suffering. Then you live in that thought. So my comment is that take the prayers that work for you, and then as the next 5, 10, 20 years of your life go by, you'll find maybe there's other prayers that really touch you and that you really enjoy. So you build up the prayers that are meaningful for you, because I agree, some prayers are they have meaning. They're for somebody at some point in time in history, and maybe they could be insightful. So why you say a prayer is because you're verbalizing, you're stating a thought and a feeling that you have. So yes, meditating is wonderful because you're at peace with yourself. That's sort of personal peace. But if we're going to interact, cultivating words which are meaningful, then that's prayers. So again, just find the prayers that are meaningful, something like that. But I don't disagree. If I'm told that there's going to be an hour-long prayer session, I might not go. If it's a half an hour session, I might go.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So I guess that's where we'll stop there. Now, on what you just said about prayers, we can say I dedicate what we've just done to become enlightened and dedicate the benefit of all sentient beings. I like to, make it sort of, okay, well, I didn't spend an hour and 5 minutes of my life attending this class and participating in it. I dedicate that to becoming more enlightened in my life. May something I understood in this class be dedicated towards being a more flexible, better person, creative person. And then take that and I offer it for the benefit of all. So it's like I take something about myself that I just did and I make an offering of it for the benefit of all. And if you were to say a prayer, for Tibetan example, may the bodhicitta that I've generated, whatever I've generated, may it grow, increase, and may it never have mercy. You can say words like that. You can throw them in there too. Okay. So thank you very, very much. Lou, thank you very much. Nice to see you again. And of course, Patrick, a second time. Aida, nice to see you. Medina, and then Lorraine. And I was trying to figure out how to say Slovehe, Slovehe de Mary. And hard to say that one, but anyway, whoever you are, hugs. Okay. Slove. Okay.
Solvay.